Unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably been hearing a lot about the stock market lately. Millions of people are beginning to invest for the first time ever. And we're realizing that the financial system should be built to work for us. That's why Robinhood is creating real human education resources, truly digestible financial news, and a platform that lets you invest in your own way, on your own terms. The next generation of investors is already here, and it includes you. Robinhood. Investing is risky. Robinhood Financial, LLC.
Spark innovation across your federal agency with IT hardware, software, and services from Connection Public Sector Solutions. Your technology procurement challenges will meet their match as Connection's dedicated account managers offer exceptional customer service, and our extensive list of supported federal contracts means you'll always get a price that works for your budget. Learn more about innovation for your agency with Connection Public Sector Solutions at connection.com/fedcontracts.
Welcome to the Stephen Shiels radio show. Houston Dunleavy's back. How are you, Houston?
Excellent. Thank you. Stephen, how about yourself?
I'm great. Things look like they're improving out there, but there's a lot of floods in Sydney at the moment. What about in Melbourne where you are?
Melbourne is its usual beautiful self, mate. It's managed to avoid the worst of everything. That's what living in Melbourne is like.
It's been 1 week. I couldn't get me washing done, Houston.
That would be terrible. If you lived in Melbourne, you wouldn't get any washing done because it rains too frequently. But when I moved to this place that I'm living in now, I bought a washing machine and a dryer for the first time in my life, and it certainly has come in handy. So you probably need one for this week. I remember the first couple of weeks that I lived in Wollongong when I moved back to Australia from the US. It was 1995, and anybody who can cast their mind back that length of time who lived in the East Coast will remember that was my first experience anyway, but an East Coast low similar to the one that's currently bedeviling you in Sydney was parked over Wollongong, and it rained solidly for 2 weeks to the point where I felt that I'd be looking down at my toes and see mushrooms growing out. It was that bad. A colleague at Wollongong University, Wayne Dixon, offered us the use of his dryer because we suddenly had a baby.
Yeah,
and a baby that was using cloth nappies. So there was an awful lot of laundry to be done, and however, nowhere to dry it. And you couldn't go out and hang it on the line because it was just pouring. And you couldn't really hang it on the balcony either because it was so wet. The air was so wet, nothing would dry. And inside, it wasn't much better. There was very little we could do. So he offered us a dryer, which saved up sanity, because I think we ended up doing like 4 or 5 loads in his dryer. Everything we owned basically went through that drying cycle. We just spent the day at his place. And I think on the way there was barely room for the 3 of us plus 4 loads of washing in his station wagon. So there was quite a bit. So there's I don't miss those East Coast lows that you have up there. We don't tend to do that. Our weather tends to come from the northwest at times, unless at the moment it's coming from the northeast. We're sort of getting the tail end of what you've got, but normally it comes from the northwest, and we get what Adelaide had 2 or 3 days ago, just slightly cooler and perhaps a little damper. Actually, I wouldn't mind a little damper right now. But I'm feeling a bit hungry. But anyway, there's an old dad joke there. But no, we've got a lot of fogginess here at the moment. That's our main contribution to the climate is fog. And I can usually see the city skyline from my window here quite easily. In fact, it's a lovely skyline. But the tops of the skyscrapers are all obscured in cloud. So I wouldn't like to be working up there in the cranes or anything, because I'm sure there's no one up there at the moment building there, because they just fall over. You can't see a darn thing.
But other than that, The vaccines have been rolled out too. Have you had your shot yet?
No, I'm in line because I'm in the tier 1B
Yeah.
as a diabetic.
Mhm.
But we're in no rush because the other thing that's happened in Victoria, of course, and in New South Wales too, is we've gone many, many days without any cases. And so they're just getting things slowly and surely together, particularly for those of us who want to make sure that these are safe and everything. And it's a new vaccine for us all. I'm probably going to get mine sometime in the next couple of weeks, I should imagine. I've just got to liaise with my GP. And I think it's Victoria's been hardest hit by it all, but at the same time we've responded most aggressively, and I think that's due to as much to the belief that people have in each other, as well as, dare I say, without being too political, the belief they have in the leadership. We just recently had the Victorian Liberal opposition. Believe it, there is one. Most people couldn't tell you the leader of the opposition's name in Victoria, but his name is Michael O'Brien. There was a Liberal, he's a Liberal, and there was a spill in the Liberal Party.
Yeah, I heard about that.
A leadership spill. But they waited until Daniel Andrews, the Premier, had broken his back and was lying in hospital. And I thought it was kind of sad that you had to wait until your opposition leader, your opposing Premier, was lying on his back with a possible broken back and potential surgery and going to be out of action for weeks before you decided you felt strong enough to change your leader. They were they're in a bit of a bind, the dear old Libs. The Victoria, when I first moved here in the 1970s, was a dyed-in-the-wool Liberal. It was Liberal. They'd been Liberal for years. But the Liberal Party then was very different to what it is now. It was far closer to the centre. It was, at most, it was a centre-right party. And it had people like Rupert Hamer, as the Premier. And as through the Kennett years and years after that, which were interrupted by some Labor politicians and governments, they moved to the left, further to the right. And I don't think that the Victorian Labor Party moved with them as much, and that's one of the reasons they've been fairly popular. When I moved back to Victoria, Daniel Andrews was already, I think, Premier.
Is Daniel Andrews Labor or Liberal?
He's Labor.
He's done a good job, actually, I think.
But I'm sorry?
He's done a good job for Victoria.
I don't think there's too many Victorians would say he's done a bad job. We all admit that to the fact that there were mistakes made, particularly, and we don't know how much of it was the fault of the state and how much of it was the fault of the federal government. With such things as the aged care problem, and 600 of the 800 people who died in Victoria were in aged care centres. And we had a lot of people die. But who was to blame for that? Depending on your political colour, you'll either blame the federal aged care minister, or you'll blame Daniel Andrews. The fact is that it was Andrews got us out of that hole. Whether or not he dug the hole, I don't know. The quarantine problem, again, should have been a federal responsibility if you're of that particular stripe that says it was their fault. And of course, the fact that with quarantine, once it's out, and it's happened in all states, once it's out, you've got to have a good contact tracing system. And they learned from what was being done up in New South Wales, by the sounds of things. And the contact tracing system here was very good. So the last quarantine escape, which was several weeks ago now, they shut that down very quickly. They got everybody, 170 people suddenly got to find themselves in isolation, and a few of them tested positive, but it all survived. And there's now been no cases of community transmission in quite a number of days. There's nobody in quarantine has it. Nobody arriving from overseas has it. So no one's going into quarantine. So the pressure is off the contact tracing people, but it's still back on the people who are doing the testing and anyone who needs to go into quarantine. While they're still putting people in quarantine, no one is sick.
Yep.
But so I guess that's why the vaccine is not such a panicked response right now, or an urgent response.
Because there's three. You got the Pfizer, the AstraZeneca, and the Johnson & Johnson, but they want to give the AstraZeneca for some reason.
Well, the deal that the federal government made was with AstraZeneca. And the deal would mean that CSL here in Australia would manufacture the AstraZeneca. And the breaking news today is that they've got 400,000 doses already, I think it was, have been made, and that's what's being passed out. And that's what went out from the 22nd of March, which was Monday. So we're going to have to live with the AstraZeneca because that's what we're making. The Pfizer was ready, and that went to all the frontline healthcare workers and people who were very frail and very sick, and very vulnerable. So that seems to have gone through the system. Nobody seems to have complained about that. So we're going to find this AstraZeneca, see if it works. I think their working target is October for everybody. I could be wrong about that. The Johnson & Johnson one isn't available here, as far as I know. It's a single shot thing that's happening in the States. The main problem with AstraZeneca is that the European manufacturer has been plagued with problems, and they're having trouble rolling it out in Europe. I was just off the phone with friends in Ireland earlier on today, and it's a complete mess.
Apparently, Europe don't want it or something. If there's side effects, that's what I've heard.
Well, yeah, there's no direct evidence about the side effects that I know of. In fact, yesterday they're saying categorically there was no direct evidence. No, but I think the main problem has been just getting the supplies out there. There have been problems in manufacturing, and I don't know what that means. Whether it's the fact that, the machines don't work or the workers don't, one of the two. But see, it's been a pain.
The Pfizer vaccine's got to be stored at -60. How come
there's not too many places you can store that?
Some people are getting the Pfizer vaccine, but they want to give more AstraZeneca.
Well, apparently it's easier to transport and it's cheaper and all that. So I think that's why the Australian government did the deal with them, because it was going to be cheaper than 25 million doses of Pfizer. That has to be kept, at an extremely low temperature.
Pfizer's a German brand as well.
Is it German or American? I don't remember. It's German.
Yeah. Johnson & Johnson, is that that'll be American, that one?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, AstraZeneca.
AstraZeneca's more than one country, I think, but yeah, it's England and Europe somewhere.
Well, other than that, Donald Trump has been voted out. Joe Biden's taken over the United States of America. How do you feel about Joe Biden?
Well, I lived there when I didn't live there when Obama was president, but I was there the night that Obama was elected the first time. I was in California that night, which was apt because once it became obvious that once Obama won California and its 60 electoral college votes, that he had won the presidency. And then there was, by about 8 or 9 o'clock on that night, I was in San Francisco, I was in Oakland, California. By 7 or 8 o'clock at night, it was clear that he'd won. And of course, Biden was his vice president. And the amount of optimism that flowed through everybody was great. I was living there when Clinton was elected for the first time, and the same optimism. I could feel it. I wasn't there, of course, when Biden was elected a couple of months ago. But I would almost bet you a polar bear to an ice cream bar that the same feeling of optimism would have hit Americans, which makes me wonder why they ever vote the Republicans in, because it's such a relief to vote them out, it seems. And that's what's happened in the last 3 Democratic presidents. Each one has been a massive, optimistic, hopeful flow. The thing that perhaps we always have to remember is that these are flawed and imperfect human beings, and they're not going to do everything correctly or right. The thing is, can they, on balance, say that things are better for them being in the office than before? And I think you can say that for both Clinton and Obama. You cannot say that about Trump. Despite what they'll tell you, there's so many worse things that are happening there.
What party does Trump belong to? Is he a Republican?
Trump is a Republican, yes. That's
so
right.
Is he a right or a left?
Very much to the right.
Gotcha. Who will take over Trump? Who's next after Trump to be elected?
Well, they don't quite work like that, but because he could still be the leader of the Republican Party at the next election if he decides to run for president, because there are some disturbing polls that still show the majority of Republicans would vote for him to be their rep.
So he can become president again if he wants.
He can, yeah, unless he gets chucked behind bars for the next 10 years. Which is, all those things are happening. He got 19 lawsuits against him at the moment, some of which carry jail sentences. But the thing is, if he clears all those hurdles, yes, in 4 years' time he could run for president again. I would doubt if Biden would be his opposition. I think it's more likely that Harris will be the next president nomination from the Democrats, if she does a good job as VP, which she seems to have done so far. The thing that might happen, and some have said it, is that maybe 2 years into his presidency, Biden will resign, just claiming health and age and so on. Or he could die in office. He's not a young man.
No.
In which case Harris would become president and be the incumbent president at the first election. And I think she can, I'm no constitutional scholar, but I think she can stand for president twice after that. So she could be president for 10 years, for example. But I think so far on certain things, to get back to your first question, I think Biden has done a number of good things. He's rolled back a number of the rather horrible anti-environment movements, developments within the Trump administration. And I think he is doing a lot better at organizing the rollout of the viruses. And the vaccines, I beg your pardon. He's already achieved his target of 100 million doses within the first 50 days rather than the first 100 days. So I think they're getting the vaccine rolled out, those people who will take it. There's a large number of people who won't. And the folks who do take it will find that it's fairly easy to do. I'm seeing all my Facebook friends getting their virus shots and being very happy about it. And so I think that will go out much more smoothly. I think things will be run better. And for the very same reason that people thought Trump would be better, that here is somebody who knows how logistics works within the government. Trump did not. Trump tried to run it pretty much as he ran his business, and you can't do that. In a constitution where, everything is checks and balances, the president does not run unfettered through the wheat fields. There are many checks and balances on the president's power, as there are on Congress's power, as there are on the power of the courts, which are the three main pillars of the way that the American government works: the legislature, the executive, and the judicial, and they all can check one another.
See, I thought in the States you could only have two runs as president, and that's it.
That's correct. That's correct. You can have two attempts. So that's what I was saying before, is if Kamala Harris is president by some inheritance of the office from Biden, either dying or resigning or whatever, I think she can still run for president 2 more times. Trump can only run for president one more time. And he'd have to do that in the next election, because if he doesn't, after that, he'd be well into his 80s and probably unelectable. What he probably will do is start grooming one of his children, I would say probably Ivanka. But that's just wild speculation on my part. The reason I don't think he groom any of the boys is that they've all proven that they can't really do the right thing. Ivanka is such a wildly cunning person that I think she would have the potential to be president. So, yeah, I mean, I even saw somebody mentioned Meghan Markle as a potential Democratic runner. I think that was a furphy on somebody's part. I'd have to check the calendar on that and see that wasn't April the 1st. No, I think if Trump doesn't run, then Ivanka will.
But other than that, the Liberal Party, something happened this week, and Scott Morrison had to sack someone. I don't know the full story. You know a bit more about that. What happened exactly?
Well, which scandal are you talking about now?
This recent one.
A batch of them. There's been a whole batch of them. Whether it's been the systematic apparent cover up of misogynistic and lewd and horrible behavior toward women, or the specific alleged rape case against one Liberal staffer, or the case of the other Liberal staffer doing something lewd and horrible to a desk.
It was that one. That
was a staffer that had to be sacked. That person wouldn't be sacked by the Prime Minister, but by his or her superior. But that means that 2 senior Liberal staffers have gone in the last 6 weeks. Even
the one that's been accused of the rape case?
Yep, he went the following morning.
Now, my question to you is...
He was dismissed on the grounds of breaching security.
Was he found guilty of it? That's the thing.
There's been no trial. He broke security protocols.
Gotcha.
And that's what they dismissed him on.
Yep. Gotcha.
The other guy taped himself, recorded himself, being lewd and revolting on a Liberal MP's desk. And that's crazy. It's just the sheer amount of entitlement you must think you have is mind-boggling. You can think you can do that, record yourself doing it with your actual face in the recording, and still think you can get away with it. The amount of entitlement that has, I can't even imagine what that's like. I grew up poor and Irish and not particularly entitled at all. As I got older and not necessarily whiter, but more powerful, I suppose, as an economic entity, as well as being, getting better jobs and controlling things and doing stuff and making stuff happen.
Mm.
I started to engage in, find out what it was like to have entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's always been something that I'm grateful for, but I'm also very conscious of the fact that I got it because of certain things that line up either accidentally or deliberately, or a combination of both, such as the accident of my skin color and the number of chromosomes I have, and that's the accident, I suppose you could say, the deliberateness of saying, well, along comes this particular opportunity, I'll have a crack at it, and doing that enough times, you put stuff together and you become somewhat successful in what you do. But whether that would have been harder for me as a black man, no matter how wealthy, or as an Irish Catholic in Northern Ireland in the late 1960s, both of whom had the same experience of being treated as second-class people because of the way they were born, or how they were born. I don't know if I'd have been able to say the same thing about myself as far as my success has been concerned. So that's a long way rambling away from the guy who did things on that desk. But he must have had a huge amount of entitlement, or been very drunk, or more likely both, in which he could feel he could do that and get away with it. Even have his mug on a camera that he was holding and still get away with it. That's hubris.
It's disgusting, in my opinion, and it makes the Liberal Party look bad as well. Now, why does the Prime Minister have to have a press conference when these stuff happens?
Well, he has presses all the time. The idea of a press conference, and you ask somebody who's more of a media officer than I.
Yep.
But a press conference is there for a number of reasons. One is to, in fact, get some information out, but it's also there it's so that the person who's giving the press conference can control the information as it goes out. Mm-hmm. This is what the narrative that we want to have heard. So we have a press conference. A media release goes out with it, which basically sums up what was said at the press conference. The only time you're in trouble at a press conference is when they ask thorny questions.
Yeah.
So most of the time your presses are your way of controlling information, controlling the news media or what the media gets. That's why the presses are happening. Sometimes they backfire. I think that Morrison's had copped a bit of flack for some of those presses. Things like crocodile tears and all that sort of stuff. And that's possibly correct to have done so, to have copped that. But that doesn't get away from the actual meaning and purpose of the presser, which is to set the agenda, rather than have the media just speculate.
What's the difference between the Independent Party? Because Mark Latham, I was a kid, he was running for Prime Minister. He was Labor, but now he's independent.
Was he independent or part of One Nation? I don't remember. I thought he was a One Nation person. Mark Latham is a mystery to me, wrapped inside an enigma, etc. I don't really understand Mark Latham. He's been state leader of One Nation in New South Wales, and he's now in the state parliament. Before that, he was leader of the ALP and leader of the federal opposition. But he's been state leader of One Nation in New South Wales since November 2018, somewhere around there, about 3 years. So he's not an independent by any means. I think he's an opportunist. You read his stuff and you think, how could anybody with a brain and a functioning pulse actually believe some of this nonsense that he's spouting? The amount of misogyny and racism that's in his utterances and the pure insult that comes with it, the vitriol that comes out of it, I think is something that could well be manufactured. It could be well be something he has studied and does deliberately. I don't think most people would be comfortable sitting in a skin that did that. If you have a conscience at all, if any form of empathy, I don't think you would be naturally like that. I in a way, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. I realize that by saying, no, it's all studied. It's all deliberate. It's made up. It's like he's playing a character. He's doing everything for effect. But he wouldn't be the first leader to do that. There was a lovely series of Kodak photos of Hitler in various poses that he was practicing whilst he would do his prepare for his speeches. Practice these poses. That wasn't off the cuff. That wasn't some sort of emotional response at the moment. It was choreographed. And I think a lot of what Latham says and does and the way he says and does things is choreographed, is planned. Because I just couldn't imagine a human being thinking that way normally.
Yeah, because he was running for the Prime Minister when I was a kid. I think it was right. 2005. He was a part of the Labour government, if I recall.
The leader of the opposition.
Yeah. And it was against, was it John Howard at the time?
Yes, he would have been. Howard would have been the PM at the time, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of John Howard, was he the one who came up with the GST, the 10%?
Well, officially that was the Treasurer, Peter Costello. Before that, John Howard is, in fact, when he was Treasurer, categorically denied there'd ever be one. And he was asked in an interview, would you say there will never be a GST? He said, no, never be a GST. Never, ever? Never, ever. And that promise lasted a few years. And the GST, like every tax on purchasing, is what they call a regressive tax, which means more people pay for it than, say, income tax. There's no way to avoid GST. You pay it on the only way you avoid GST is you write it off as a business expense. And your average schmuck like you and me can't do that. We're on a salary. We can't write the GST off. I have a freelance business as a composer and as a conductor and an actor and so on. And I have to collect GST for the government. But because I do that, every GST purchase I have is deducted from my income. So you're looking at people with small and large businesses who are the ones who aren't paying their GST. Because if they pay GST for their business, on their business supplies, whatever, they get to deduct that and they don't pay it. So you can see why the GST would have been a hot potato for the Liberals at the time, because officially everyone knew it was a regressive tax. So officially it was always going to hurt the poor and the middle income earners. So he would say never ever. Once he got into office, suddenly it became happening.
Why is it
everybody pays a fair share? No, everyone doesn't pay a fair share.
Why is it that a big mining corporation pays less tax than a small business?
Well, that's again the same thing. They get to deduct every purchase they think of. And there are tax credits given to big companies in order to encourage them to invest.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they do or not is up to them. They still get the tax credit. Whether or not they put $20 million into the ground in new tunnels or whatever. So, that's because we have a love affair with big business at government level. The Liberal Party says it's the party of small business. It's not really.
Mm.
No party is the party of small business.
Well, the Liberal Party's the rich man's party.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't get rich in a small business.
No. And what's the Labor Party? What's their they're more healthcare focused, I think.
Well, one would assume they're a little bit more focused to middle and lower income earners, particularly lower income earners, and protecting them. And things like healthcare and education and savings and cost of living, they matter to people who are on a lower income. Particularly education and saving, because they don't want their kids to go through the same struggles they did. End up turning them into Liberal voters. That's the only thing they do. But yeah, it's a case of having two different sets of culture behind you. One for Labor, one for Liberal. Liberal National Country Party, I should say. And so that's the difference between the two, is that they're looking to catch a different demographic. And John Howard's success, I suppose, was that he caught the imagination of the working class slightly better than his Labor opposition mates did. And they were referred to often as Howard's battlers, the people who make it, get by, but they work hard, but they don't make a lot of extra money. Howard managed to capture them and turn them into votes for himself and his candidates and his party. And that was a big success. The reason he stayed in power for so long, why he was prime minister for so long. He had these people who normally one would expect to vote Labor, voting Liberal. Britain has a similar group of people, the working class Tories, who are very conscious of the difference between them and the Tories, but think by emulating the Tories, they may end up being mistaken for them. So I'm not sure if that's what it is with the working class Australians, but I think it's more along to the point of feeling that someone understands what you're doing and who you are. And Howard was able to carry that off better than anyone else. For me, the party before or since.
Yeah. Yeah, look, John Howard even said like Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, but they never did. As well.
Yeah, well, that was erroneous. That was erroneous reporting and conclusions from American intelligence. And that was all a bit of as Howard himself would have described it, had he been able to, a furphy. Is what was one of his favorite words. But it was a furphy. It was not true. And someone like Colin Powell, the American chief of staff, going on before a committee and testifying that it was true, feeling that he was being used in years later to such an extent where after being Secretary of State with one of the Bushes, he leaves the party. He's no longer a Republican. And he endorsed Joe Biden last time. So he sort of has he's had a gutful of what the American Republican Party can do. I know a lot of people who quit the Republican Party in the 1980s because they, at their 1980 convention, I think it was, claimed to be the party of God. And I know people who both God-fearing and atheist who left the Republican Party because of that. It's pretty dire, actually.
Well, there's been a lot of corruption in politics before I was born, and even still today.
Oh yeah, you take the word corruption out of the dictionary and just put a politician's name next to it, and that's all you need to do. So much of it is about graft and kickback and doing stuff for your electorate. They'll do stuff for you.
Mm.
Politics is as much about human interaction and negotiation as it is about everything else. I think New South Wales still takes the cake.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first one that had an independent commission against corruption, and the one that needed it most. But I've got a feeling that we're going to be saying the same thing in Victoria not too long from now. Not necessarily for this government, but certainly for governments in the past.
Exactly. I mean, when's the next election, Houston?
You have to Google that one, mate. Because, got to be within a certain amount of time from the last one. But Google will tell you.
Dr. Google will.
Yeah, Professor Google in this case, I think. The last one was, a year and a half ago? So every 3 years we have one.
Mm-hmm.
End of November, probably next year, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that. But it'll be on the website of the electoral aec.com.au, Australian Electoral Commission.
That's it. And music-wise, what have you been working on with music?
Oh, music-wise. But now, last time we talked, I just finished the first movement of a concerto for euphonium and brass band. Since then, I finished the second movement, and I'm working on the third. Mm-hmm. In fact, the third is coming at me in huge waves, thick and fast. I can't write it down fast enough. I'm just hoping it just all stays in my head. Music-wise, that's the main thing at the moment. There are a couple of other projects down the line. There's a string orchestra piece for a festival in Chile at the end of next year. I've got a feeling I've got a couple of other pieces to write. And then there's 2 big recording projects I'm trying to get off the ground. Mm-hmm. Get the funding raised and then get those off the ground. So those 2 things are happening. And then it's not a full-time living. I'm also doing a lot of acting and, of all things, stand-up comedy.
Nice. Yeah, have you heard of Rodney Rude?
Oh, yes. Not only heard of him, but I've met him.
I still listen to him today.
Yeah, I've met him a few times. His daughter was a student at the University of Wollongong.
Yeah.
He'd pop up to her functions and so on, and he was at her graduation. Mm-hmm. He does not dress in public the way he does for stage, and he's a very different personality. You'd be happy to know, yes. Very different person.
I've seen his old stuff on YouTube, man. It's like the funniest stuff you can watch.
It's quite funny, in a logical and rude way. Yes.
Yeah.
If you're there for the pee jokes and the body jokes, it's the right one.
He's always going on about Pauline Hanson as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of comedy to be made. There's a terrific parody person. He does a drag act where he calls her Pauline Pants Down, and his stuff is great. He's actually released a couple of singles, which is supposed to be her saying, "Please explain." And all the things she didn't understand, followed by "Please explain." Yeah, there's a couple of them around. Couple of, perhaps not enough. Haven't heard any at this festival yet.
What's he doing? Is he retired?
Who's that? Sorry,
Rodney Rude.
Not that I'm aware of.
I sent him a letter in the mail to see if he'd like to come on the podcast. Still waiting for his reply.
Probably didn't get the mail. Probably somebody else was employed to do that and said, "Oh, it's not the ABC or Channel 9. Flick it."
Ah.
Yeah, that's possible. Always possible.
Oh, man. You can listen to his stuff on Spotify and all that as well.
Yes, you can, just as you can mine.
Mm.
And I believe yours.
Mm. Hey, did you hear that I won first place in the Voyager songwriting competition?
Yes, I did. Congratulations.
I'm getting a little plaque in the mail to put on the wall. I wanted the prize money instead.
Maybe they used the prize money to send you the plaque.
It's a bummer. I wanted the 10 grand. They said no, only the overall winners get the prize money. You know that?
Yeah. No,
it's been good. It was fun.
It was good. Well done.
You know.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Houston. You know, and look, thanks for coming on today's show, Houston. It's always great having you on.
You're welcome.
Where can people find you on your social medias?
Yeah, on my socials. Yes, HoustonDunleavy.com.
Yeah.
And it's HoustonDunleavy.com, which is my main website that needs updating. But also on my management page, which is Howell Management. I'm thinking of perhaps shifting a lot of my website stuff over there to my manager's page, or vice versa, or just linking to my website from there.
You have a manager?
Yes, I'm with the Howell Management.
I'm trying to get an agent and a manager. They're hard.
Yeah, but it's hard. You've got to have a very clear and defined goal, and also a very clear and defined reel, both the show reel and music reel. And they've got to show you a lot of things that you do. Well, at least a lot of things I do, because I do a number of things across a number of genres, and so it's not always easy finding a fit with an agency.
Do they get you a lot of work?
Not yet. It's a fairly new arrangement. It's just before Christmas.
Okay, so they're trying you out.
I've still got a few things to do, like put a headshot bio together. So. Yeah. But I am doing another play coming up 28th, 29th, and 30th of May in Richmond, Victoria, called The Invisible Sword.
Awesome.
And where I play the aptly named Madman. So apparently I'm the madman of the show. But
all right, thank you to the sponsors Grammarly Premium, vidIQ, and TubeBuddy for sponsoring today's show, and thank you to Amazon Music Unlimited. If you want your free trial of Amazon Music Unlimited, all you need to do is visit my website to find out more. And new podcasts are out every Fridays. Don't forget to turn on the notifications, subscribe to the podcast, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. See you later.
At Facebook, we've tripled our safety and security teams and invested billions to keep our platforms safe. What's next? We support updated internet regulations that set clear rules for addressing today's toughest challenges. Learn more at about.fb.com/regulations.
Spark innovation across your federal agency with IT hardware, software, and services from Connection Public Sector Solutions. Your technology procurement challenges will meet their match as Connection's dedicated account managers offer exceptional customer service, and our extensive list of supported federal contracts means you'll always get a price that works for your budget. Learn more about innovation for your agency with Connection Public Sector Solutions at connection.com/fedcontracts.